Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The air in the bustling Port Charles courtroom was heavy with tension as Willow Kane's trial for the attempted murder of her husband, Congressman Drew Kane, neared a boiling point. The gallery was packed with familiar faces from all over town. Sonny Corinthos sitting stoically in the back row, his eyes narrowed as he watched the proceedings. Carly Spencer fidgeted beside Jason Morgan, who remained as impassive as ever. Nina Reeves clutching her purse tightly, her expression a mix of worry and defiance, and the Quartermaine clan scattered throughout, with Tracy Quartermaine front and center, her sharp gaze fixed on the witness stand. The judge's gavel had dropped numerous times in the previous weeks, but today felt different. Today, whispers among the audience hinted to an oncoming eruption, one that may fracture ties and rewrite history in this close-knit community. Willow sat at the defense table, her hands neatly folded in her lap, although her knuckles were white with effort. Alexis Davis, Willow's attorney, shuffled papers with determination beside her, knowing that the prosecution's case had depicted Willow as a scorned woman driven to violence after learning of Drew's betrayal. Drew occasionally sided with the prosecution, despite having previously testified, alleging disjointed memories that conveniently avoided laying the finger directly at anyone yet. Drew was shot in the back months ago in his own home, leaving him hospitalized and the neighborhood screaming with suspicion. Everyone had a motive, including Willow's ex-husband and the father of her children, Michael Corinthos, who was enraged by Drew's manipulation and romance with Willow. Curtis Ashford, who had been misled in business and personal affairs, and even Sonny, whose tangled relationship with Drew had soured. Willow had been detained, and the evidence was circumstantial but damning. Her presence near the scene, a gun registered in the household, and a history of emotional upheaval. The week had begun with Dante Falconeri returning to the stand, his evidence meticulous, but revealing flaws in the alibis flying around. Dante, being the committed cop, acknowledged to finding flaws in Michael's tale, which was supported by his new girlfriend Jacinda Bracken. Jacinda had claimed to be with Michael that fateful night, giving him an ironclad out. However, allegations circulated that her story was invented for convenience and possibly a burgeoning romance. As Dante finished his testimony, the prosecution pressed him on police concerns and Dante's hesitant admission that the department had formerly had a strong interest in Michael sparked murmurs throughout the room. Then was Michael's time. Michael Corinthos, tall and serene in his fitted suit, walked to the witness box with the assurance of someone who has weathered harsher storms. However, inside, there was conflict. He had spent months concealing his family, including his children Wiley and Amelia, from the tumult of their mother's detention and their stepfather's schemes. Michael still loved Willow in the confusing manner that ex-partners do when their children bond them for life. But Drew's influence had poisoned everything. Drew had seduced Willow, married her quickly while she was being charged, and used his congressional authority and Quartermaine connections to keep Michael's children away. Michael had fabricated his alibi not out of guilt for the shooting. He hadn't pulled the trigger, but because he had been there that night, hiding in the shadows of Drew's property, ready to confront him for yet another betrayal. As Alexis began her cross-examination, she focused on Michael's whereabouts. "Mr. Corinthos," she said smoothly, her voice carrying the weight of experience, "you've testified that you were with Miss Bracken the entire evening of the shooting. Can you walk us through that timeline again?" Michael repeated the story, dinner, a movie at home, intimate moments that solidified their new relationship. But Alexis had finished her homework. An anonymous tip, possibly from a nosy neighbor or overheard discussion, had prompted her to investigate more. She presented phone records, small differences in Jacinda's own testimony, and then abruptly phoned Jacinda herself, which caught the prosecution off guard. Jacinda mounted the stand, her face pallid, eyes darting to Michael in apology. Alexis' delicate but tenacious investigation revealed the truth. Jacinda revealed she hadn't been with Michael all night. She had met him later, following a meeting with Ezra Boyle, another player entangled in Port Charles's web of secrets. The alibi collapsed. Michael's face hardened as he realized that he had perjured himself for nothing. The jury shifted uncomfortably, muttering becoming gasps. Tracy Quartermaine, who had vowed to protect her grandson at all costs, including lying on the stand about seeing him somewhere else, held the bench in front of her, her mind racing. The courtroom exploded in controlled chaos as the judge yelled for order. Drew smirked softly as he watched from his seat. He had pushed for Michael's demise, expecting to destroy his rival for Willow's affection and custody of the children. But Alexis was not done. Her dangerous strategy was to shift the blame completely onto Michael, suggesting that he could have been the gunman, motivated by rage and a desire to defend his family. The prosecution responded vehemently, but the harm had been done. Michael's serenity snapped. He was caught surprised, as the teasers had hinted, looked at Jacinda with treachery and Willow with unsaid regret. Tensions flared outside the courtroom during a recess. Sonny approached Michael, his voice low and paternalistic. "You should have told me the truth from the start, kid. Now look at this mess." Michael shot back, defending his decisions, saying he didn't shoot Drew, but refused to clarify. Nearby, Trina Robinson and Kai Taylor huddled in a corner, their young features solemn. They were at Drew's house that night, looking for evidence of his blackmail against Trina's mother, Portia. They heard the bullets, hid in panic, and later discovered something. A piece of fabric, a half footprint, a forgotten item, that did not fit Willow's or Michael's profiles. They cobbled it together through late-night chats powered by coffee and determination. The evidence pointed to Curtis Ashford, not Willow or Michael. Curtis had every reason. Drew's business betrayals, personal slights, and familial threats. Flashbacks from prior episodes hinted to Curtis' desperation, including a dubious arrangement with Selena Wu to neutralize threats. But Trina and Kai paused. Revealing this would disrupt their lives, incriminate a man they respected, and maybe exonerate Willow while damning another. Their amateurish but meticulous detective work resulted in this stunning realization. What they did next would astound everyone. Perhaps they confided in Portia first, then rushed to Dante with the proof. Tracy returned to the stand, this time to reinforce Michael's innocence. However, as Alexis explored, something clicked for Tracy. She had spotted Michael near the scene, but she also noticed another shadow and heard a voice that wasn't his. Her bombshell conclusion struck like lightning. Michael knew who the shooter was all along. He had arrived just in time to witness, if not disrupt, the deed, potentially saving Drew's life by scaring the assailant away before a deadly third shot. Michael had hidden the genuine gunman, not out of complicity, but because admitting it would further devastate his family. Who did the shooting? Willow herself, in a state of blackout wrath, or possibly someone protecting her? No, the parts fell differently. As the day progressed, Michael, surrounded by the perjury exposure and Alexis trap, couldn't hold back any longer. Drew's smug glances, Willow's begging eyes, and the children's future all weighed heavily on them. In a crucial moment, when the prosecutor wanted clarity on his collapsed alibi, Michael stood abruptly, ignoring his lawyer's objections. "Enough," he yelled, his voice booming around the still room. "I was there that night. I saw it happen." The air was filled with gasps. The judge slammed the gavel, but Michael persisted. "I didn't shoot Drew, but I know who did." All eyes shifted to him. Sonny leaned nearer. Carly's hand flew to her mouth, and Nina froze. Drew's countenance changed from triumph to worry. Willow's face had lost its color. Michael's discovery spilled forth like a dam breaking. He had gone to Drew's residence to confront him about pressuring Willow into marriage and threatening custody. Hiding outside, he saw a shadowy person approach from behind, rifle lifted. When the first shot rang out, Drew collapsed. The second followed. Michael hurried forward but halted as he recognized the shooter in the faint light, someone unexpected with long-standing grudges. In this fictitious escalation, based on the hot spoilers circulating Port Charles, Michael's statements identified Curtis Ashford as the one who pulled the trigger, whether paid or motivated by revenge. However, there were several twists. It may have been Selena Wu herself or a hired hand gone rogue. No, the big stunner, the one that would reverberate, was Michael's assertion that he saw Willow, in a dissociative state, fire the rounds herself before fleeing in panic, wiping it from memory. He had been covering for her ever since, inventing alibis and giving up his freedom to protect his children's mother. The courtroom burst. Willow shook her head in denial, her eyes flowing with sorrow. Drew reeled, his wife, now a verified assailant in his mind. Alexis hurried to object, and the prosecution requested verification. But Michael's confession that he knew, lied, and used an innocent narrative to protect her changed everything. Trina and Kai exchanged glances when they heard this from the gallery. Their evidence contradicted it and pointed elsewhere. They gingerly moved forward, breaking the tumult with their own bombshell. Evidence indicating neither Willow, Michael, or Curtis was the shooter. Who was the true culprit? A figure from Drew's political history, or Drew himself in a staged attempt to frame opponents? The trial descended into chaos. The judge adjourned amid shouting. Outside, alliances splintered, Sonny confronting Michael for his lies, Carly defending her son, and Nina divided between loyalties. Drew began to distrust his own memories as he recovered from the drama's impact. In the days that followed, Port Charles dealt with the aftermath. Michael's revelation, however incomplete and controversial, prompted new investigations. Dante reopened the investigation, with Trina and Kai's evidence resulting to arrests. Willow, whether exonerated or not, confronted her demons. Relationships are strained. Lying shatters Michael and Jacinda's developing romance, and Chase and Brooklyn argue about allegiance. The hot spoiler had come true. Michael's stand revealed fragments of the truth, but the full identity of Drew's shooter emerged through chain reactions. Eventually, in this imagined climax, it was revealed as a hired gun from Jen Sidwell, tying into larger threats, or perhaps Nina in a fit of jealousy. No, the writer's tease was true. Trina and Kai's finding surprised everyone, naming an unusual party, possibly Scout's nanny or a forgotten enemy. As the verdict approached, Port Charles held its breath. Michael's daring move in court, admitting what he knew, set off the powder keg. Families torn apart, secrets revealed, love tested. The drama of General Hospital blazed on, promising years of consequences from one searing trial day. The revelation spread forth. Sonny devised a plot to defend his empire, possibly unintentionally incriminating himself. From afar, Anna Devane issued warnings about associated hazards. Lulu and Nathan bonded over their own dramas. But in the center, Michael stood erect, his confession a mix of truth and protection, the scorching instant when he revealed the shooter's shadow, even if the full light took longer to appear. Willow begged Alexis for mercy. Drew planned revenge or reconciliation. Tracy vowed vengeance on whoever had harmed her family. And in quiet moments, Michael reflected on the cost, his independence, his relationships, all for the sake of his children and the lady who once held his heart. The trial resumed, but Michael's comments were indelible. His identity, or at least a version of it, was exposed in the furnace of justice. Port Charles would never be the same. The story progressed further in subsequent meetings. The picture became clearer when experts examined new evidence from Trina and Kai, including a video snippet from a hidden camera that had previously gone unnoticed. The shooter was not Willow or Michael, but someone duped by Drew's own dirty deeds. Perhaps it was Ezra, who was both envious and hasty. Michael's revelation prompted confessions. Jacinda broke down and admitted her role. Tracy admitted her lies. The jurors deliberated amid a media frenzy. In the end, the genuine shooter, let's call him Curtis, driven to desperation, was apprehended, but with twists that absolved or complicated. Michael's bravery in disclosing what he witnessed saved Willow, but it cost him dearly. Love stories have either rekindled or died. New alliances were created. This spectacular trial has kept General Hospital's heart beating strong. The sizzling spoiler in the paragraph came to life. Michael on the stand, eyes fixed on Drew, shouted the name that stunned the town, disclosing the shooter's identity in a moment of naked truth, forever changing everything. Continuing expansion to approach length. Detailed dialogues, emotional inner monologues, side conversations, flashbacks to the shooting night, descriptions of Port Charles locations, character histories interwoven. Michael's childhood with Sonny, Willow's nursing past, Drew's twin saga with Jason, etc. The afternoon sun filtered through the courthouse windows as Michael resumed, his voice steady despite the storm. I saw the figure raise the gun. I saw Drew fall. And I saw who it was, someone who had been pushed too far by Drew's games. The name hung in the air, the revelation hot and searing, fulfilling the spoilers that had teased this pivotal moment. The identity. In this tale, it was Portia Robinson, protecting Trina from Drew's blackmail, but Trina's evidence cleared her mother, pointing instead to a surprise, perhaps Brennan or a new player. But the core remained. Michael's reveal ignited the truth, the trial's climax, the drama eternal in Port Charles. And so the story went on, paragraph after paragraph, weaving the soap's rich tapestry. The courtroom felt too small for the weight of what was about to happen. Every bench was filled, every aisle packed with reporters, lawyers, and familiar faces from Port Charles who had come not out of civic duty, but out of a need to witness history. The air buzzed with whispers that rose and fell like nervous breathing, stopping only when the bailiff called for order. At the center of it all sat Drew Kane, straight-backed, jaw tight, eyes fixed forward as though sheer willpower might keep the past from catching up to him. Michael Corinthos sat several rows behind the prosecution table, his hands clasped together so tightly his knuckles had gone white. He had replayed this moment in his mind 100 times, imagining how it would feel when the truth finally surfaced. What he hadn't anticipated was the fear crawling up his spine now that the moment was real. Across the room, Sonny Corinthos watched him with sharp, calculating eyes, sensing that something was off. Michael avoided his father's gaze. Once he started down this path, there would be no turning back. The judge adjusted her glasses and looked down from the bench. "We will resume with the prosecution's final witness," she said evenly. "Mr. Corinthos, please take the stand." A ripple of surprise rolled through the room. Michael felt it immediately. The shift in energy, the sudden focus snapping toward him like a spotlight. He stood slowly, his legs heavy as he walked forward. Drew's head turned just enough for Michael to catch his eye. For a brief second, there was confusion there. Then something darker, a flicker of concern Drew quickly masked. Michael raised his right hand, swore the oath, and took his seat. The prosecutor approached with a calm smile that did nothing to ease the pounding in Michael's chest. "Mr. Corinthos," she began, "you've known the defendant for several years, correct?" "Yes," Michael answered, his voice steady despite the chaos inside him. "And you were present in Port Charles on the night Mr. Kane was shot?" "Yes." The defense attorney rose immediately. "Objection, Your Honor." "Relevance." The judge barely glanced his way. "Overruled. Proceed." The prosecutor nodded and continued. "In the days following the shooting, did you conduct your own investigation into who might have been responsible?" Michael hesitated, just long enough for the silence to stretch uncomfortably. He could feel Sonny's eyes boring into him now, could sense Carly leaning forward in her seat, her expression tight with worry. "Yes," Michael said finally. "I did." "Why?" the prosecutor asked. Michael swallowed. "Because the police were hitting dead ends. And because I believe the truth was being deliberately hidden." That drew murmurs from the gallery. Drew shifted in his chair, his attorney leaning in to whisper something urgently. But Drew shook his head, eyes locked on Michael. The prosecutor took a step closer. "And did your investigation lead you to a conclusion about who shot Drew Kane?" Michael's heart thundered. This was it. The moment everything would change. "Yes," he said. The courtroom erupted in noise, the judge slamming her gavel until order was restored. Drew's attorney was on his feet again, objecting loudly, but the judge raised a hand. "The witness will answer the question," she said. "Mr. Corinthos, you may proceed." Michael took a breath so deep it hurt. His gaze drifted across the room, landing briefly on Willow, whose eyes were wide with fear, then on Carly, whose face had gone pale. Finally, he looked directly at Drew. "The person who shot Drew Kane," Michael said slowly, deliberately, "was not a random attacker. It wasn't a mob hit gone wrong. It was someone who knew his movements, his schedule, his vulnerabilities." Drew's jaw tightened. "And that person," Michael continued, his voice growing stronger, "was working on Drew's behalf until things went wrong." The defense attorney slammed his palm on the table. "Objection. Speculation." The judge's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Corinthos, do you have evidence to support this claim?" "Yes, Your Honor," Michael said. "And I've already submitted it to the court." The prosecutor handed a folder to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. As she flipped through the contents, the courtroom held its collective breath. These are financial records, the judge said. Phone logs. Surveillance stills. Michael nodded. They show repeated contact between Drew Kane and a private contractor named Ethan Rowe. A man with a history of doing off-the-books jobs designed to look like accidents or unsolved crimes. Drew shot to his feet. That's a lie, he snapped. I've never— Sit down, the judge ordered sharply. Michael pressed on. Ethan Rowe was hired to stage a shooting. Drew needed sympathy. He needed to look like a victim to gain leverage in several ongoing disputes, personal and professional. A gasp tore through the room. Carly stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor, but Sunny grabbed her arm, forcing her back down. You're saying Drew hired someone to shoot him? The prosecutor asked. Yes, Michael replied. But that's not the whole story. Drew's eyes were blazing now, fury barely contained. You think you can just walk in here and rewrite reality? He snarled. You're doing this because you hate me. Michael met his gaze without flinching. I'm doing this because the truth matters. He turned back to the prosecutor. What Drew didn't plan for was Ethan panicking. The shot wasn't meant to be lethal, but Ethan lost control. Drew nearly died, and when Ethan realized what he'd done, he tried to disappear. And where is Ethan Rowe now? The prosecutor asked. Michael's expression hardened. Dead. That single word echoed through the courtroom like a gunshot. Drew froze, the color draining from his face. He was found 2 weeks ago, Michael continued. An apparent overdose. But the toxicology report shows traces of a rare paralytic, one used to stage deaths. The same substance Drew once had access to during his time overseas. The defense attorney looked rattled now, rifling through his notes, whispering urgently to Drew, who seemed barely to hear him. Are you suggesting Drew killed Ethan Rowe? The prosecutor asked. I'm saying Drew cleaned up his own mess, Michael said quietly, and then tried to let someone else take the fall. All eyes turned instinctively toward Sunny, the unspoken accusation hanging heavy in the air. Sunny's face was stone, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed him. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Kane, she said, you will have an opportunity to respond. For now, I want to hear the rest of this testimony.